Welcome back. We're continuing our exploration of Father Gabriel of St. Mary Magdalene's incredible work, Divine Intimacy. And today we're looking at a meditation that is especially powerful.
It is. We're turning to Meditation 35, which Father Gabriel titles, Let Us Make Good Use of Time. Now, a lot of people might turn to this at the end of the year, as a sort of New Year's resolution reflection.
Right, a time for stock taking.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But its message, its concepts, are absolutely central to the Carmelite tradition for every single day of the year. The urgency it talks about isn't seasonal. It's existential.
And that's what we want to get into today. Our goal is to examine this whole concept of time, but through the lens of eternity. We want to get past the modern idea of just being productive and really grasp the profound spiritual value of every single moment.
And recognizing that each moment has these immense spiritual implications.
The meditation asks us to begin in a very specific way. It says to recollect ourselves in the presence of the child Jesus, and in that light, to examine the value of our time. Why is that starting point with the child Jesus so important for this whole reflection?
Well, that image, it just provides an immediate clarity, a purity of intention. You're looking at time not through your own preoccupations, your schedules, your deadlines, just, getting through the day.
Right.
Instead, you're looking at it through the eyes of the incarnate Word. And that reminds you that all time is a gift from God, given for a very specific loving purpose. It immediately shifts your focus from what the Greeks called chronos, just clock time, to kairos, which is opportune, grace-filled time.
That's a huge shift in perspective.
It's a necessary one. It's a moment of grounding, of humility, before you confront what is, frankly, the terrifying urgency of our very limited time here on Earth.
Okay, let's start to unpack that, because terrifying urgency is it's intense. So the first meditation starts with a reality that is just. It's so fundamental, but I think we often manage to ignore it. It says very plainly, time passes and does not return. We all know that on a tactical level, but how does Father Gabriel raise this to a theological principle?
He does it by introducing this concept of definite time. The text says that God has assigned a definite time to each one of us. And this is really the critical point for anyone serious about the spiritual life.
Okay.
It's not just a general lifespan. It's the specific, precisely tailored period for you to realize God's individual divine plan for your soul. It's perfectly calibrated to bring your soul to the specific height of sanctity, the unique degree of love that God has intended for you from all eternity.
So it's not arbitrary at all. Every moment we're given is, in a sense, a necessary building block in the architecture of our own eternal glory.
That's a perfect way to put it. And so if we spend that moment carelessly, we're not just losing a minute or an hour, we're actually damaging the very foundation of that spiritual structure.
And when the meditation talks about time ill spent, it's not just about procrastination or, regretting that you didn't get something done.
No, it's much deeper. We're talking about time that is, and the text is very clear on this, lost forever. Our life is described as an uninterrupted, continual flow. Once a second passes, the specific opportunity to gain the grace attached to that second, to fulfill the divine will in that moment, it's simply gone.
It's a sobering thought. It means our spiritual life isn't a flat line where we can just make up for lost time later. It's a constant forward-moving path. If we stop or if we go the wrong way, we can't just hit rewind.
You can't. And that non-renewability of spiritual opportunity, it forces us to really consider the serious consequence of negligence. When we waste time, we're not just failing ourselves, we're actually falling short of God's specific loving plan for our unique journey back to Him.
That is the essential insight, isn't it?
It is. And it leads right into what is probably the most daunting part of this whole meditation, the idea of the temporal limit of spiritual growth. The source material is unequivocal. It says that when our time ends, we become established forever in the exact degree of love we reached in this life.
That word established, it sounds so final, almost like a scientific law for the spiritual world. Your capacity for love right now becomes your final capacity for all of eternity.
The finality is absolute. And this is where the spiritual stakes become crystal clear. Time is the means. It's the factory of merit, you could say. It's the place where the eternal soul, the one that will live in God's presence forever, is perfected.
So Father Gabriel presents this very binary reality based on our efforts now.
Yes. If you manage to attain a high degree of love in this life, you are fixed forever in that state of glory. And that translates into a profound and immense capacity for happiness and for glorifying God.
But the other side of that is just as stark. If you only possess a slight degree of love when you die, then that slight degree is all you'll ever have. That becomes the permanent measure of your eternal joy. It really is a terrifying realization.
It's the ultimate motivator. The meditation states it plainly. No further progress will be possible when time has ended. This means that the time we're in right now, this conversation we're having, the duty you're about to perform, the intention you hold in your heart, it is critically important.
Because the spiritual progress we make in this very moment is what dictates our eternal capacity for love and for glory.
Exactly. You can't earn more merit. You can't increase your degree of love. You can't expand your capacity for God once your time has run out.
For someone who is really dedicated to the interior life, that idea could almost be paralyzing. If the stakes are infinite and the time is finite, how do you stop that urgency from just spiraling into anxiety or even despair? Where does God's mercy fit into this intense finality?
That's the crucial question. And the answer is in understanding providence. God, in his infinite mercy, has perfectly matched the time you have with the grace you need to achieve your specific plan. If you have a profound destiny, he gives you the time and the grace necessary for it. The urgency isn't born from a fear that God is setting us up to fail.
Yeah.
It's born from gratitude for the gift of this present moment, because this moment is infused with sufficient grace. Despair only comes in when we consciously, willfully reject the grace that's being offered to us right now.
So realizing the limit should actually motivate us to act, not freeze us in fear. It shifts the whole focus from just getting through our time to maximizing its grace.
And our entire eternity depends on how we respond to the grace of this very brief temporal life.
To put that reflection into immediate practice, the meditation then gives us this powerful command from Scripture.
Yes, it cites the apostle in the letter to the Galatians, chapter 6, verse 10. Therefore, whilst we have time, let us work good to all men.
And that's the practical application, isn't it? It's the command to take this urgency and immediately put it into action. So how does this working good connect back to that specific, unique degree of charity we were talking about?
Well, working good here is so much more than just, superficial acts of service. It's the constant effort to ensure that our internal state, our love, our fidelity to God, our submission to his will is always growing. The whole goal of this sustained effort is to realize that specific degree of charity God intended for us.
So it means structuring our life, our prayer, our daily tasks.
Yes, everything. So that at the end of our life, the spiritual accounting, so to speak, shows that we reach that specific degree of love with which we are meant to love and glorify him forever. The work has to be sustained, it has to be focused, and most of all, it has to be infused with love, because that clock is always counting down to the moment our capacity for glory is fixed.
So if the whole purpose of our life is to reach that unique level of charity, we need a practical, day-to-day way of turning these fleeting seconds into eternal treasures. It raises the question, how do we actually do that? How do we manage that supernatural conversion?
We have to move from the theory to the actual technique of redeeming time.
And this next section gives us the core Carmelite strategy for doing just that. It helps us move from anxiety over the quantity of time we have left to focusing on the quality of our intention. The source gives this beautiful, clear instruction from Sister Carmela of the Holy Spirit.
It's a remarkable quote, she says. We must give every moment its full amount of love and make each passing moment eternal by giving it value for eternity.
That is just a perfect synthesis.
It is. It immediately makes the quantity of what you do secondary to the quality of your intention. The physical time an act takes is temporal, it passes. But the merit it gains can be eternal, but only if it's defined entirely by the charity, the divine love with which you perform it. This is the real meaning of redeeming time. The action itself might be fleeting, but when it's filled with love, it acquires a spiritual value that lasts forever.
That's incredibly consoling for people whose lives are filled with what seems like small, repetitive, or hidden tasks. If I spend an hour on a mundane chore, say data entry or cleaning the house, that hour is either just 60 minutes of my life gone, or
it's a permanent, irreversible increase in your eternal capacity for love. And the only difference is the charity you apply to it.
That really is the engine of the interior life.
It is. The text makes it clear that charity is what allows us to adhere to God's will with submission and love. And that loving submission in performing the duty of the moment is the realization of God's plan for your soul. The degree of love you reach through doing that duty is the very degree with which you will love and glorify God forever.
So it elevates every small act. It turns preparing for a meeting or doing the dishes into these foundational acts that contribute to our final glory.
Precisely. Which makes it clear that the real battlefield is internal. Our external actions are, well, they're generally fixed by our state in life. Our duties are what they are. So the true measure of our sanctity has to be the internal level of our intention and our commitment.
And that brings us right up against the great internal enemy, what the meditation calls natural inertia. It reminds us that we only have this short day of this earthly life to grow, and to get the greatest profit from it, we have to overcome that inertia.
Natural inertia is such an accurate term. It's like a law of physics for the spiritual life. It's our tendency to take the path of least resistance. It's the default setting of our fallen human nature to seek ease, to take shortcuts in prayer, to avoid sacrifice or any kind of prolonged spiritual effort.
It's a gravitational pull toward comfort and carelessness.
It is. And the meditation warns against it explicitly.
Can we make that more concrete? What does natural inertia actually look like in our day-to-day life?
Oh, it's everywhere.
Mm.
In prayer, it's choosing to just mumble through some vocal prayers when you know you should be applying yourself to deeper mental prayer. In your work, it's doing the bare minimum required rather than striving for excellence out of love for God.
It's avoiding the small inconvenience.
Yes, the extra errand, the slightly harder effort, the immediate apology when you've done something wrong. It's settling for mediocrity when the call is to heroism, because heroism takes effort and inertia always prefers rest. And the remedy the meditation gives is to carry out our duties and good works with our whole heart.
Okay, so what does that mean to do something with our whole heart, especially when we're talking about daily, non-heroic things? I mean, you might not feel spiritual ecstasy while you're paying the bills.
And that's the key. The whole heart is a commitment of the will, not of the feelings. It means, first, purity of intention. You dedicate the action to God with a firm decision to please Him, no matter how boring the task is. And second, it means completeness of effort. You fight that inertia that tells you to rush or to cut corners or to let your mind wander.
So if a task requires 15 minutes of focused attention,
Then, with your whole heart, means you give the entirety of those 15 minutes to that task, focused only on the intention to please God. You actively conquer the temptation to check your phone or to daydream. That's how mundane duties are transformed from occasions for sloth into these powerful, eternal spiritual engines. They're elevated by intentional love.
and if we can actually do that, if we can apply that whole heart effort, the text suggests the results are, well, they're exponential. It points to the incredible potential for love's increase by citing Saint Therese.
Yes, her famous statement of confidence. Your love has grown with me, and now it is an abyss, the depth of which I am unable to sound.
It's a breathtaking statement.
It is, and it captures this reality of how grace works in our finite time. Saint Therese understood that the soul's growth, when it's fueled by pure and complete love, isn't just a straight line, it accelerates. When we fight inertia and act with pure intention, divine love increases immeasurably. She lived the truth that this short day of life, when it's lived intensely for love, becomes an engine of limitless spiritual growth.
So the finite time, when it's infused with the infinite quality of charity, can yield infinite results.
That's it. Her analogy of the abyss is so important. It reminds us that our spiritual life should be about exponential growth, not just incremental gains. And that realization transforms the urgency from a burden into the ultimate motivator.
The urgency then drives us to make haste.
Exactly. And the meditation drives this point home with that final scriptural warning from the Gospel of John, chapter 9, verse 4. The night cometh when no man can work.
And that's not just a metaphor for death, is it? It's a literal statement about the end of all meritorious activity. Once the light of this life is gone, your ability to accumulate eternal merit, to expand that capacity for love, is over.
It's strictly limited. If you truly grasp the finality we talked about in the first section, that the soul's degree of love is fixed at death, then this urgency becomes the only logical response to the gift of time. We have to use the light while we have it.
And that leads us to an inevitable place. No matter how resolved we are to use our time well from now on, we all have to look back with some sadness, some regret, over the time we've already failed to redeem.
Yes, and we need a path forward that addresses that spiritual debt of the past.
Exactly. We have to move from the principle of maximizing the future to the very real and often painful experience of having already failed to maximize the time that's gone. So as we stand in that light of eternity and look back on our short day so far, we almost inevitably face this grief over lost time, over our carelessness and our laziness. And the meditation gives us the perfect remedy for that spiritual pain, this profound, heartfelt prayer from St. Teresa of Avila.
The necessary prayer provides a kind of psychological and spiritual release. It's often prayed at the end of a retreat or at the end of a year, whenever the soul really takes stock of its own negligence. And it starts not with a polite apology, but with a raw, honest self-reproach, a complete acknowledgement of past failure.
Her words are so powerful. How little I have loved you, my God. How badly I have spent my time.
And this lament, it comes from her work, exclamations of the soul to God. It's so resonant because this is a soul who is already far advanced in the spiritual life, and yet she's still grieving the perceived inadequacy of her response to God's grace. It reminds you that spiritual maturity doesn't erase your awareness of your own past failings.
And she immediately highlights this dramatic contrast, this gap between God's generosity and her own response. She says, "How late have my desires become enkindled, and how early, Lord, did you go in search of me?"
Calling me to spend myself wholly in your service.
It perfectly captures that feeling of being a poor beggar who realizes that the divine invitation was sent early and generously, but her own response was delayed or meager or just half-hearted.
The natural human reaction to seeing that deficit would be, despair or a kind of spiritual paralysis, the feeling that the gap is just too big to close. But St. Teresa, she doesn't stay there. The prayer makes this stunning pivot from failure to absolute confidence. It's the Teresian genius, really, this balance between profound humility and bold confidence in God. She moves so quickly from looking inward at her own failures to looking outward at God's omnipotence. And that shift is the spiritual turning point of the entire prayer. She places all her hope in God's power to fix her lack.
She almost throws the theological rulebook back at God, but as an act of love. She recognizes his boundless wonders, and she implicitly challenges our human limits on what we think his grace can do. She asks, "Can it be, Lord, that there is any limit to your wonders or to your mighty works?"
That rhetorical question is what sets up her request for what seems impossible. She acknowledges the conventional wisdom, the physical reality that time lost is gone forever. She says, "I seem to be talking foolishly, for it is usual to say that time lost can never be recovered."
But she immediately counters that law of nature with this profound act of faith in God's absolute power.
This is where her confidence just takes flight. She grounds her hope entirely in his power, saying, "Blessed be my God. O Lord, I recognize your great power. If you are mighty, as indeed you are, what is impossible for you who can do all things?"
That faith needs a closer look. It's one thing to say, God can do anything, but what is she actually asking for here? It seems to defy the non-renewable nature of time that we established in the first section.
And that's the profound theological nuance of the prayer. She's asking God to overturn the spiritual consequences of her past temporal waste. And this confidence leads her to her specific petition, her plea for restoration.
She says, "Restore the time I have lost, my God, by granting me your grace both in the present and in the future, that I may appear before you wearing the wedding garment, for you can do this if you so will."
That phrase, "restore the time I have lost," is key.
So let's focus on that. If the degree of love is fixed at death and past moments are gone forever, how can God restore lost time? She's clearly not asking to travel back in time. It must be a request for a radical intervention in the present.
It is. The restoration she's asking for isn't about literally reliving lost moments. She's asking for such an overwhelming, flooding abundance of grace right now that her soul's current growth rate completely surpasses what it would have been if she'd never failed.
So it's not simple addition. It's more like spiritual compound interest applied exponentially.
That's a great way to think about it. If a soul was on a path to reach, say, degree X of charity, but wasted 15 years, she's asking for the grace in her remaining 5 years to be so intense, so superabundant, that it not only gets her to X, but it makes up for all the potential lost in those wasted years, and maybe even goes beyond.
It's a petition for accelerated sanctity.
It is. It relies on God's power to give grace in a measure that far exceeds our normal, human, temporal trajectory.
Oh.
This flood of present grace is what can perfect the soul quickly, allowing it to put on that wedding garment, the perfection of charity that it needs to appear before God. It's a theological challenge to our conventional thinking. God's power and mercy can supersede the limitations imposed by our use of time.
So, acknowledging our past failures isn't meant to be a source of despair. It's meant to be a springboard for this extraordinary act of faith in God's restorative mercy. The greater our awareness of our deficit, the more powerfully we can call on God's omnipotence.
And that intense confidence has to flow immediately into a practical commitment, because this restoration requires our cooperation. The prayer isn't just a request for a passive, miraculous fix. It demands a total response from the person praying. It's the duty of the handmaiden.
Right. The text brings it back to a personal commitment. The only way to cooperate with this request for restoration is to try with all my might to increase my love.
And that resolution connects the mystical request to our practical daily life. The execution of that is defined by the commitment to fulfill all our duties, perform all our good works with all my heart and with all my goodwill.
Mhm.
It's reinforcing the mandate from the second section, but now it's fueled by this powerful hope of Teresian restoration, not just the fear of finality.
But the meditation demands a profound self-honesty here. It forces us to contrast this very high resolution with our enduring human struggle.
We have to acknowledge our weaknesses, our carelessness, our indolence, that chronic human tendency to run from exertion and sacrifice. We have to realize how often our nature just seeks the easy path, the least tiring option, and how easily we fall back into the very negligence that caused the lost time in the first place.
We have to acknowledge that enemy within, that constant drag of inertia. And so the final part of the prayer becomes a recognition that even this powerful resolution depends entirely on divine help.
Yes, we have to pray for strength. Help me, O Lord, and strengthen my love by your almighty power.
And this leads to what is for me the most beautiful and humbling plea in the whole meditation. It distills the entire Carmelite approach to time into one sentence.
What I do for you is so little. Grant, O my God, that I may at least do it with all the love possible. It's a prayer that begs for maximum quality, maximum intention, even if the quantity of our deeds feel small or late or insufficient. It turns our gaze away from the mountain of our past failures and focuses it on the simple, achievable goal of infusing the very next action with every ounce of love we can possibly muster.
The ultimate lesson here really is that redeeming time isn't a matter of speed or volume, but of transformation. It's about converting mundane duty through supernatural love into eternal merit. So as we wrap up, what does this incredible exploration of Father Gabriel and the Carmelite saints really mean for us today? The central teaching seems so clear. Time is the vessel for love, and its duration is fixed. The only way to redeem the time we've lost isn't to dwell on the past, but to live the present with an intensified charity.
That radical, whole-heart commitment that transforms our temporal duties into eternal merit. It's a profound challenge for any soul that's seriously seeking God. It reminds us that His standard isn't our visible output or our earthly success. It's the intention, the love that we infuse into every single action.
And the degree of our glory, our ultimate capacity for love for all of eternity, is being finalized by the love we cultivate right now, in this moment.
We have to see this short day of life not as a frustrating limitation, but as the most precious, finite opportunity we have for infinite expansion.
We'd encourage you to reflect deeply on your own use of this short day. The call isn't to frantic, anxious activity, but to a deep intentionality. The challenge from this meditation isn't just to do more, but to infuse every necessary action, every duty with the maximum love possible, asking for that Teresian grace of restoration.
So maybe consider this as you go about your day. If God, in His immense power, can truly restore lost time and accelerate your path to holiness through an abundance of present grace, what is one single small duty, that task you currently perform with the most indifference or negligence or just mechanical repetition? What is one task that you could resolve to transform today?
What action, no matter how small, could you make your personal focus, resolving to perform it with all the love possible, and by doing so, turn a fleeting temporal moment into a truly eternal merit?
Take that resolution and then pray for the strength of St. Teresa to carry it out with absolute confidence in God's power.